فمش عارف حصل لهم ايه. فانا عايز اعرف حصل للاطفال ديل شنو، ماتوا حيين، ايه اللي حصل فيهم. فانا عايز اعرف المعلومات دي عن الاطفال دي. وفي السودان كمان لازم السودان يعني كوضعه كالآتي: البيوت كلها مبنية من الطين، وما فيش أسواق سوبر ماركتات متوفرة، ما فيش عيادات متوفرة، ما فيش فلوس في البنك مشان الواحد يقدر يعمل شغلات تنفع السودان في الآخر. فأنا بطالب من المسؤولين برفع وعي الأطفال بالتغير المناخي من خلال الأنشطة المختلفة. لا مش عايزة أقف. فلازم نلقى حلول للأطفال مشان الأطفال التانية ما تتضررش بسبب الفيضانات والحاجات اللي حصلت معاه، ما تحصلش مع أطفال تانيين. وشكرا. مش عارف.
انت قلت احسن من اللي انت كنت كاتبه، عارف كده؟
Thanks, Assad. Like this is the this is the difference between these panels and talking to bureaucrats. Alhamdulillah. Let's also now move to Falmata and Mani. So Falmata and Mani, they come from Niger. They work with making displacement safer, an initiative in Niger. Madam Falmata, you were originally displaced by conflict, but climate change has made life even more difficult. Would you like to share your story?
Andiaro, jitu andia sosongo, kunaro ushenaro, COVID, COP27 ushenaro, jitu ma andia soro, nara arangalema kuruma urende, jitu andia soro, jitu rana andia soro namare, kuro Niger alan, chidi Niger ndiaro chidi pauvre ba, Niger nde thala, chidi gere duk soro shema thalao. Ande jitu bure kutundero no kurwalunjie usu telemiro ande a kutundero kutukilyo awande tayana gana choto ba nganjinden chuluna ande ar kwada da déplacer de ici awali din nemenaro nande kayir ma chirini kutundero kutukilyo ande ar sumalande chonno sonde nayro chude.
Bonsoir à tous. Elle s'appelle Falmata, elle vient du Niger, et du Niger, elle vient de la région de Difa. Et elle dit que leurs champs ont été inondés depuis des années successives et ils ne produisent plus. Leurs animaux, elles n'ont plus d'animaux, plus de champs, et elles sont réfugiées au niveau de Awaridi, qui est un site périurbain du chef-lieu de la région. Elle dit là-bas, les conditions sont extrêmement difficiles parce qu'ils vivent dans des abris très précaires. Et elle dit qu'elles vivent sous des hangars et des fois ce sont des sites spontanés, ce n'est pas des camps, c'est extrêmement difficile. Et elle dit que leurs enfants ne partent pas à l'école, il n'y a pas l'eau potable, la santé n'est pas assurée Elle dit que même la nourriture est difficile à trouver parce qu'elles ne produisent plus rien, elles se sont déplacées, elles ont laissé tout là-bas, là où ils ont quitté.
Awa commande rayan arkaladim kumbu de mbo sana kuru nachira dum kumbu na yesoro na wallum kur kala yurto e tayende kuru yalla ande lokolo leriyare leyndi kokolo hondende kirande duk so kalanka wonara wallina awa chayro buroy maru duk so ka wayna kala juttunde la ngande ar karaye.
Elle dit qu'elles ont eu beaucoup de soutien de la part du gouvernement et des autres partenaires. Mais elle dit que le Niger, même, c'est un État qui est très limité et qu'il ne peut pas soutenir tout ce qu'ils font et qu'ils ont besoin d'un appui international.
Shukran. Mani, would you like to go ahead? Thank you.
Ok, merci. Moi, c'est Mani Tahirou. Je viens du Niger également. Et le Niger, pour ceux qui ne connaissent pas le Niger, c'est un pays d'Afrique, c'est un pays sahélien au cœur du Sahel, mais c'est un pays aussi frontalier du Sahara. C'est un pays désertique à plus de 50% dans sa partie nord et centre. Mais nous avons aussi une partie au sud où les gens pratiquent l'élevage et l'agriculture, où ils tirent leur subsistance. Ces dernières années, c'est extrêmement grave parce que les sécheresses font que les productions ne donnent plus. Et les animaux subissent de très graves conséquences. Ils meurent. Et là où ça produit dans la partie sud, les inondations ont empêché la production. C'est le cas de cette dame, Falmata. Quand on prend dans la région où elles sont, presque toute la bande s'est déplacée, complètement s'est déplacée. Il n'y a personne, il n'y a que des bandits qui occupent dans la zone. Parce qu'après après cette pénurie successive des années improductives, les jeunes s'en sont donnés au banditisme armé. Ils ont rejoint à ceux qui offrent l'emploi et ce sont les groupes terroristes et les djihadistes. Et ce sont les mêmes jeunes, de fois, qui reviennent s'en prendre aux populations, qui enlèvent les jeunes filles, qui font des massacres. Donc, en plus de ces aléas climatiques, de ces affres climatiques, ils subissent aussi des attaques. Et ça, c'est le caractéristique du Sahel. Les sécheresses font que ça ne produit plus et du coup, la plupart des jeunes s'adonnent au terrorisme. Et les autres sont exposés. C'est dans ce contexte que nous avons mené les projets appelés Rendre le déplacement plus sûr. Et moi, je suis de l'ONG Développement pour un mieux-être, qui est membre du réseau GNDR. Nous avons eu l'appui du GNDR pour mettre en place ces projets. Tout au long de ces projets, nous avons mené beaucoup d'activités. Nous avons commencé d'abord par cartographier tous les aléas, tous les acteurs, tous les problèmes. Et nous avons fait une analyse profonde des lois et stratégies au Niger relatives au déplacement et relatives à la gestion et à la prévention des crises et catastrophes. Et cela dit, nous avons identifié les gaps et dans nos interventions, nous avons, puisqu'il faut prioriser, même si tout est priorité, il faut quand même prioriser. Donc nous avons commencé par faire des pièces d'état civil aux personnes déplacées, particulièrement aux femmes et aux jeunes, pour que les femmes accèdent au centre de santé, pour qu'elles accèdent et les jeunes accèdent à l'emploi, pour qu'ils arrivent à accéder aux services sociaux de base. Nous avons aussi mené beaucoup de campagnes de sensibilisation et de formation pour que les gens comprennent les avantages que leur confère la loi en matière de déplacement liés au risque. Et nous avons mené une campagne de plaidoyer pour que la vie des personnes déplacées forcées soit prise en compte dans l'élaboration des lois, dans l'élaboration des stratégies et politiques nationales. Et nous avons aussi aidé, dans le cadre de ce projet, la région de Difa à réviser son plan régional de réduction des risques de catastrophes pour prendre en compte les déplacés, les personnes déplacées. Et nous avons aussi mené une campagne de plaidoyer pour que l'État au niveau national prenne en compte, dans sa stratégie nationale de réduction des risques et catastrophes, prenne en compte les personnes déplacées. Donc ce sont là des actions que nous avons menées avec les projets, mais c'est vraiment une goutte d'eau dans la mer. Nous avons identifié beaucoup de gaps. Et je vais laisser la parole pour que les autres aussi puissent dire ce qu'ils ont à dire.
Shukran, Mani. So now we'll move to Apira, who's joining us online. Thank you very much, Apira. I know it's not easy. So Apira is a refugee climate activist who is doing incredible work in his host country of Uganda. As you can see, he's joining us online today. Apira, you are working with refugees and host communities to build resilience to climate change in displacement settings. Can you tell us more about the initiatives you were involved in? Thank you. And also, what type of support do you need to do more? Over.
Yes, thank you so much for this and for attending from actually attending them. Climate change, as you know, which is already washing our displacement and vulnerability. From what we had from the video, climate change and its impacts on the growing adversity.
Apira, the sound quality is really poor. Is it possible that you might have a headphone set that you could put on, and in between I'll pass to Iman, and then after you, if you've got any headphones, then I'll revert back to you. Would that be okay? Over.
Can you hear me clearly now?
Yep, that's much better. Over. Go.
Okay. Yeah, I want to go straight to my intervention, what I do in the community to increase refugee resilience to climate crisis. From my personal story, I have faced and seen what my people face in relation to climate crisis. And this is what has influenced me to step forward even when I'm still at school and even when I'm still far away sometimes from my community where I study, and seeing the level of poverty that climate change has escalated among refugee community. Of course, we know refugees mainly depend on agriculture as a source of livelihoods, and this agricultural activity is mainly disrupted by climate crisis. So the main reason I step up to come to support my community is because I've seen so many children can't go to school because their parents can no longer provide for their scholastic materials. I've seen so many children in child-aided families who can't go to school because they have to look for source of livelihoods. I've seen how the climate change, like increasing droughts and floods which affected my region, made so many people consistently move back and forth to South Sudan. They find no more safety whenever sometimes they want to go back home. Climate change is forcing them back to come to another country and further take refuge for quite longer. So this is the reason why I stepped forward as a student and talk to my fellow students to step forward and form a group we form an organization where we mainly make sure we try to create a small action to fight climate change by planting trees. So our intervention is mainly planting trees where trees are destroyed, because people destroy trees for firewood, they destroy trees for source of livelihoods, making charcoal, which they use to sell, to earn money and take their children to school. And consequently, the place has turned dry, no rainfall, and subsequently no agricultural production. So this has really prompted me to step forward and mobilize our personal resources and capacity and our time to get some tree seedlings and plan around to secure our environment and perhaps restore our soil productivity by planting more trees. This is what we are doing in our capacity. And so my key message to the global leaders is mainly to come forward and support refugee-led organizations which are doing their interventions to combat climate crisis, and also to meet the commitment that is aimed at providing $1 billion annually, which is aiming at providing mitigation and adaptation measures in developing countries between 2021 to 2024, ensuring at least 50% of climate finances at least to go to adaptation. Mainly, our refugee community use firewood as a source of energy for cooking food. As I said, sometimes they use firewood at night as a source of light for kids to read. This is a terrifying, it's a terrible situation. And so if the global community can consider energy sources, provision of energy as a priority for refugees and refugee hosting populations, so that the vegetation is not cut down. Protect those who are displaced by climate change. This is normally why I say refugees should be included in decisions that affect them when it comes to climate change. Because for how many times shall refugee continue being displaced? As we know, majority of world's population being displaced are now related to climate change. How can we stop unending displacement? This is really a big concern. Why my communication goes to the world leaders that need to ensure strong housing systems and food security and protection for refugees. As I just made mention that as refugees, our shelters, we build our shelters temporarily using firewood, using wood. Extract all this from vegetations around. So when we are destroying this annually, you realize that annually we have to depend on the trees as a material for building. So every year trees are being destroyed for building materials and for other purposes. So when we provide housing systems to refugees, we can save millions and thousands of trees from being destroyed. So this is mainly my message to the global community, mainly to support refugee interventions and host communities in ensuring they restore the environment and replace the trees cut down, and also support the smallest interventions that they bring up in making sure they restore the environment. As for example, as a refugee community, we find that we are normally limited by the extent to which we can access mitigation methods. We, for example, tree seedlings. Many refugee community nowadays, if to move to the settlement, the majority of them want to replace the trees they cut. And because they know source of their livelihoods and their environment depends on the tree they have to grow, but unfortunately, they can't manage to access tree seedlings. This is the painful aspect of it. They are willing to plant, but the accessibility to these tree seedlings and how to maintain them to grow is actually so limited. This is why we are calling for global leaders to step and to support refugee community, to start creating their own solutions. As we know, the least responsible for global warming are always being hit hardest. These are the refugee community. They do not produce a lot of smoke in the atmosphere. They do not, create a lot of massive destruction to our environment, but they are willing to replace the trees being cut. Why can't we support them and make them step forward? We have had emotional stories where so many people, like myself, I got delayed to join university because my family could no longer find source of finance which used to take me to school. You know, this is the reason why so many refugees nowadays cannot afford basic source of livelihoods and other aspect of human rights like education. So we need to step forward to empowering their resilience, empowering their capacity to make sure they meet at least a minimum standard of quality lives.
Thank you very much, Apira, for those powerful words, and that was particularly important. I think one of the key takeaways which has been resonated throughout this is don't make decisions about us without us. Now I'd like to pass on to Iman. Iman is an IDP from Yemen working with a women-run solar station. And we're talking a lot about renewable energy, but we're often talking in a way which is almost disconnected from reality. And Iman is bringing that reality. She is working as the head of the solar microgrid plant. Iman, can you tell us more about the solar project you're involved in? And not only the benefits, but some of the challenges that you have in making it work. Like, what can we do as a community to support you? Thank you.
السلام عليكم للجميع. طبعا مشروعي هو مشروع شبكة مصغرة كما ذكر الأستاذ. فهذا المشروع أثر كبير جدا للمجتمع كونه طاقة شمسية حفاظا على البيئة. مكون فريقه من 10 نساء. هذا المشروع جلب الفائدة كشريكة ومديرة لهذا المشروع وكشريكاتي لكسب رزق من هذا المشروع. ثانيا فوائده كانت عديدة من ناحيتي كفائدة كدخل رزق لي ولشريكاتي، وكذلك لتخفيف معاناة النازحين والمجتمع المضيف في اليمن. طبعا الكل يعرف على أن اليمن يعاني منه صعوبات كثيرة وكذلك صراعات ونزاعات. فهذا المشروع وجد أثر كبير جدا في محافظة حجة رغم لأنه من الشبكات المصغرة وليست من الشبكات الكبرى. جلب فوائد لتوعية المجتمع حول البيئة، بأن البيئة تكون بيئة نظيفة، بيئة لديها الناس يستطيعون أن يغيرون في الواقع إلى حقيقة. تغيير الواقع من ناحية مثلا الحفاظ على البيئة من الغازات والانبعاثات الكربون. طبعا في محافظة حجة لا يوجد فيها كهرباء بل باليمن بأكمله غير التجار المستوردين بالوقود بالديزل المشتقات النفطية. ففكرة المشروع جاءت من خلال ما نعانيه من الواقع المجتمع الذي يعاني من عدم وجود الكهرباء إلا من خلال التجار. الاستغلال الكيلو بالدولار أو $2 في الساعة. فهذا كان تحديات عديدة أمامنا بسبب عدم وجود مستثمرين محليين أو حكوميين أو أجنبيين لهذه المشاريع. فقررنا على أن هذا المشروع يكون في محافظة حجة بالمنطقة التي نعيش فيها بسبب وجود عدم ارتفاع درجة الحرارة العالية من 40 إلى 45 درجة مئوية. فالحمد لله المشروع مستمر. حصلنا على دعم طبعا من UNDP المنفذة له SDF في عام 2019، وما زال المشروع مستمر من 2019 إلى 2022. هذا المشروع جلب فوائد كثيرة كما ذكرت اجتماعيا واقتصاديا وبيئيا. اقتصاديا بسبب سعر الكيلو لدى التجار بالوقود المشتقات النفطية نحن عملنا بتخفيض بسعر مناسب يتلائم مع المجتمع والنازحين. كذلك من الاقتصاد هو محافظة على البيئة والتخفيف من معاناة الناس. ثالثا يوجد هناك إعادة تدوير النفايات. في هذه إعادة تدوير النفايات تم التخفيف من قطع الأشجار التي سببت تصحر في اليمن بأكمله. فهذا التصحر جلب لنا زحف الرمال والصحراء والجفاف للأرض اليمنية سواء في حجة أو جميع المحافظات اليمنية. فعملنا إعادة تدوير للطهو. طبعا الكل عارف على أنه في اليمن والمحافظات الأخرى أو الدول الأخرى متأثرة بسبب الصراعات. فقطع الأشجار هذا في جميع الدول أدى إلى التصحر والتغير المناخي في البيئة. فنحن في اليمن كمجتمع بسيط يحاول أن يبدأ الابتكار والتفكير في تغيير المناخ. فهذا كان تغيير المناخ أولا في الطاقة الشمسية وهي تحويلها من طاقة شمسية إلى طاقة كهربائية بدل التجار. ثانيا إعادة تدوير النفايات مثل الكراتين هذه التنك التمر عملناها للطهو بدل قطع الأشجار. فقطع الأشجار قمنا بالتوعية إلى المجتمعات حولنا بأن قطع الأشجار يسبب في زحف الرمال والتغير المناخي. فالطهو ممكن على أنه يكون على الطاقة الشمسية ليس فقط بالحطب. ثالثا بيئيا طبعا بسبب العادات والتقاليد التي تمر بها المجتمعنا اليمني واجهنا صعوبة كثيرة في الخروج للعمل كامرأة أن تكون في الميدان. هذا كانت صعوبة جدا واجهناها في التحديات. فهذا التحدي عملنا أول شيء توعية كأسرنا أننا نحن المرأة ليست فقط في المنزل وإنما حتى في العمل إدارة الأعمال. فهذا العمل اجتاز بصعوبات كثيرة. أولا من المجتمع رفضه أن المرأة تعمل خارج المنزل. ثانيا أن الطاقة الشمسية كيف بتولد لنا كهرباء. فكانت هذه الفكرة صعوبات كثيرة أمامنا. فثالثا على أنه كهذا المشروع يقيم فيه امرأة أن تشتغل وأن تخرج إلى المنزل وتدير عمل خارج المنزل وداخل المنزل وأن تكون لها إدارة واتخاذ قرار في هذا المجتمع. فنعم نحن حققنا هذا الحلم ونحن أثبتنا جدارتنا من 2019 إلى 2022 في هذا المشروع وتوعية المجتمع بأن المرأة تستطيع أن تدير عمل وأن تكون في مجال الأعمال في اليمن وغيرها من الدول وخاصة في محافظة الحجة التي متمسكة بالعادات والتقاليد. غيرنا نظرة المجتمع من النظرة الاستهزاء والسخرية إلى نظرة تقدير واحترام. ونتمنى أن تكون مشاريع الطاقة الشمسية تتوسع في اليمن وأن يوجد هناك مستثمرين محليين وأجنبيين. وشكرا.
Thank you so much, Iman, for that. Now Shahab who's representing the Bangladeshi diaspora. Shahab, can you describe, like for countries like Bangladesh, which, as we know, have contributed so little towards the climate change, what does climate justice look like? And particularly in your position, because one of the important things is that we, again, what Emmy mentioned was in another panel, is that we represent the people who cannot be here. So in your very important strategic position, what are the things that you would see that need to be done to support adaptation, resilience in Bangladesh? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, good evening all. My name is Shihab. Choudhury. I am representing, as Chair has said, the Bangladeshi Diaspora Climate Action Group. Sorry, I'm going to put this a bit. Which we set up earlier this year. So as Chair has said, I'll be shifting discussions ever so slightly to unpick what more can the diaspora communities do to support issues around loss and damage and climate justice. So I think we've heard a series of really powerful personal testimonies. What I can do is very briefly in the time that I have is share a second-hand testimony with the recent floods in Bangladesh, and then sort of move on and then sort of look a little bit more into the future. So I myself am a second-generation British Bangladeshi, and like many from the Bangladeshi diaspora in the UK, I'm from Sylhet, and in particular the district of Sunamganj. So the floods that happened earlier this summer which devastated Sunamganj and many other districts within Sylhet. It was very difficult and it was very personal. We had a lot of family in Sunamganj, and it took several days for us to actually contact them. We didn't know whether they were okay or not. Thankfully, they were, and as soon as we established contact, like many others around the world, part of the Bangladeshi diaspora, we began to raise funds to support humanitarian and relief efforts. In terms of loss and damage, with these floods, we had 7.2 million people were affected, 4 million people needing humanitarian assistance, and unfortunately 130 people, at least over 130 people, passed away. So just to go back to Chair's sort of question around what more can we do. So as a diaspora group, we in the UK, the UK-based Bangladesh diaspora, we contribute over $2 billion within remittances to Bangladesh every year. But something that myself and the Bangladeshi Diaspora Climate Action Group sort of strongly believe is that we've got to go sort of beyond just that financial lens from the diaspora point of view. As a diaspora, we've got really, really deep skills that represent a wide range of sectors. Within our group, we've got people who are from the public sector, the private sector, academia, and everyone's very passionate, and they've got that sort of close personal link and those emotional attachments to Bangladesh. Our group sort of boasts expertise from green finance, from law, from psychology, from sustainable land use, waste management, renewable energy, and decarbonisation. But to directly address your question around what more can we do in terms of loss and damage, it's a really difficult sort of situation as a diaspora. What more can we do? I think there is a lot. There's a lot there to unpick in terms of what does climate justice look like, and sort of speaking to the folks within our group. What role can the diaspora play to support Bangladesh, for example, securing additional global funds for things like loss and damage, things like the Scottish fund, the inaugural loss and damage fund is just a start. But as a diaspora group, we can advocate for long-term, sort of sustainable and guaranteed funding streams from the global community. I think there's a sort of idea that within climate discourse, we've got to sort of detach funds that are linked to adaptation and funds that are specifically for loss and damage. There requires sort of different funding streams. Loss and damage is something that is needed quite rapidly when extreme weather events sort of negatively impact communities. Those types of finances need to be available at short notice. So just to quickly wrap up in the few sort of seconds that I've got, as a diaspora group, we've got the skills and expertise to sort of be there at the table advocating for our families that are in Bangladesh that are being negatively impacted by climate change, as you said, a lot of which is not their own making. So we've got a very strong sort of advocacy role that we can play to sort of be that voice for the people who may not have it. I hope that answers your question.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Trevor. There was a figure this morning which I heard in one of the other panels which said that 70% of the new arrivals in Dakar are basically have been encouraged, forced because of weather events and climate change. So very, very relevant. I'd just like to pass over now to is originally from Sudan, is now in the US, and this is our second COP. Emmy, you've got to focus. Emmy, we've got, this is our second COP together. So what do you see needs to come out of this COP to make a difference? You've been talking to everyone from refugees to senior government officials. What needs to be done?
Thank you so much. It's really, really an honor to be here. And yes, I was, who couldn't be distracted by Assad? You know, it's really wonderful to be here again. But what I am seeing is that I think we need to move away from commitments that are not honored to commitments that include follow-through, continuity, accountability. I think that these spaces can act either as only a convening space or as a space that's a stage to speak on, or they can act as an accountability space. And I do think it's a lot harder not to follow through when you know that that the people you are actually accountable to will be face to face with you next year. I'm asking us and challenging us to be even more radical than that. And I know I said the R word, but what I mean, is that I'm asking us to actually, how do I say, be face to face even more than before. If COVID-19 taught us anything, or the past couple of years taught us anything, is that you can get a lot done even when you're not physically there. And for me, that can take COP to the next level. Can you imagine if we actually formed coalitions, action coalitions, out of the conversations that we're having now? Can you imagine if we followed up more than once a year? If you look at what we get done just in a couple of weeks or a couple of days around these convening spaces, imagine what we can get done if we commit to involving one another in every stage. And that brings me to the reason that I'm here and that all of us are here, because we really do firmly believe that if representation only is thought of at the outcome or the output stage of a solution, then that solution is not viable. I think that you have to include people like us and the people who are most affected by the solutions at the outset of planning, at every stage of planning and execution and follow through. The people that you are held accountable to are not everyone that sits, in the boardrooms or the negotiation rooms. They're right here, they're on the ground, they're the people we hold ourselves accountable to as well. I think people are at the causing end of climate change and the receiving end as well. If we're able to connect those two ends and move toward viable solutions that are actually representative of the communities that they purport to serve, then and only then can we catalyze change. That's what I like about being able to see everyone and be together like this. We can leapfrog through many, many years of work that any one of us could do alone, maybe in like, what, a million years or something. But the point is, alone, we're much less effective than we are together. If I were to leave it on a very simple note, and I'm saying this as an American who voted before flying to COP in Pennsylvania, no less, the problems that exist in the world, thank you, the problems that exist in the world did not happen overnight. They were not the cause of one person. They took many, many, many years and generations to happen, and that's how much time it'll take to solve them. We need all hands on deck. We need everyone. You can't spare anyone. So if you can do anything, just remember us and advocate for each other in the rooms that you move on to. Thank you.
We'll be hearing, hopefully, Emmy a little bit later. But I'd just like to open up the floor now to questions to any of our panelists. So we're not after statements, we're after questions. So just like short, sharp questions. And if you'd like to direct them to a particular panelist, please do. So if you could sort of say your name and who you are. Okay, the gentleman first, and then I'll sort of go swing through, and then, yep. Yep. Okay, you're going to have to, actually, no, because the interpreters are going to have to, oh yeah, Mike. Hen's coming with the mic.
مساء الخير. ايمان شكرا على البرزنتيشن اللي انت عملتيها. انا سؤالي ليكي، محطه الطاقه الشمسيه اللي انت خدتي التمويل بتاعها، عايز اعرف بس هي بتقضي كام بيت؟ يعني بتخرج طاقه قد ايه؟ والطاقه دي بتنفع كام واحد؟ وسعر الكيلو وات ساعه انت قلتي ان هو دولار تقريبا بالنسبه للتجار في اليمن، فانت بتبيعي المحطه دي بتبيعي الطاقه بقد ايه لكل كيلو وات ساعه؟ أنا اسمي محمد منصور، أنا صحفي في موقع وتلفزيون الشرق. شكرا جزيلا.
شكرا. طبعا طاقتي محطة توليد كهرباء، تمام. بالطاقة الشمسية حولناها إلى طاقة كهربائية، تم تحويلها. في البداية كان معي 8 مشتركين في 2019. رجعت في 2020 حصلت على جائزة أشدن الدولية. تم توسعة المشروع من 16 بطارية إلى 28 بطارية. الألواح كانت لدي 16 لوح، الآن 46 لوح إضافة 10 ألواح. قدرة البطارية الواحدة 220 أمبير. قدرة الألواح 325 واط. طبعا الكيلو لحظة العفو. طبعا أول في البداية كانت زي ما ذكرت لك من 8 إلى 23 إلى 43. في 43 تم توسعتها من إيرادات المحطة. طبعا احنا نعملها كمحل شركة، ليست محطة فقط، كأنها شركة. هذه الشركة لديها مدخرات، لديها إهلاك، لديها حسابات ميزانية في سند القبض وفي سند الصرف. فالكيلو عند المحلات التجارية يعني $1، كم $1 ب700 ب500 $. فاحنا بما يعانيه المجتمع لدينا من صعوبات في الدخل اليومي لديهم، يعني كأمن غذائي في عدد الوجبات حقهم ما تتجاوز 3 وجبات، يعني من وجبة إلى وجبتين في اليوم. فهذا صعوبة جدا إن الطفل يستطيع أن يدرس، أن يستطيع أن يذاكر في ظل ظلام لا وجود للكهرباء. فنحن كانت أسعارنا مناسبة جدا لتوليد الكهرباء ب200 ريال، يعني بنص $1. وشكرا.
I think you're a great salesperson there, Iman. Okay, so down to the front.
Okay, she gave it to me. Hi, thank you so much. My name is Anila Noor, and I am representing New Women Connectors and Global Refugee-led Network, which is one of the co-partner for this session. First of all, thank you so much for sharing your insights and your experience. Being a refugee-led representative, we really want to seek how we can collectively make accountability, because planning happening and it's go away when we go home back. So what's your suggestion how we can make accountability systematic change towards make sure this implementation together happens? So what's your suggestion for this? Thank you.
And who are you directing that to, Anila?
To anyone who want to work with us to make this happen.
Who would like to answer that?
Iman.
Oh, Iman. Go, Iman.
طبعا منزل ليس منزلا الشخصي كبيت، ليس منزل شخصي كبيت، وإنما للبلد التي أعيش فيها، يعني كاليمن مثلا. فاليمن من شمالها إلى جنوبها إلى شرقها إلى غربها هو منزلي، هو بيتي. فبالتعاون والتكاتف والاستثمار، سواء استثمار محلي أو استثمار خارج، فأنا هذا الاستثمار لا يكون لي استغلال شخصي، وإنما للمجتمع، للتخفيف من الصراعات والنزاعات، للتخفيف من معاناة الانبعاثات الكربون كما ذكرنا والمتغيرات المناخي. فضروري إننا نعمل على تكاتف وتجامع وتوعية المجتمع أولا فهذا في البداية توعية المجتمع على التغير المناخي. كيف أغير التغير المناخي؟ ما هي الحلول التي سوف أعطي لها حل من هذا التغير؟ فهذا العمل بالتغير المناخي وبإيجاد الحلول في الواقع، طبعا الحلول ليست أقوال وإنما أقوال تكون وأفعال. فهذا هو منزلي الذي سأحافظ عليه بالتكاتف والتعاون من جميع النواحي. وشكرا.
Shukran Iman. I think it's amazing. I love what you said. So I'm just going to add on and to answer directly, and I love exactly what she's saying. I think she's really on the right track. I want you all to start by asking yourselves 2 questions from now on in every space that you enter. 1, who am I accountable to? And 2, who can I hold accountable? And then make the moves that you make next with those 2 things in mind. And ask yourself a 3rd question.
I learned about environment and resource economics, and that's when I realized that being aware about the impact of the environment to your life and understanding your personal responsibilities to the environment and knowing that there must be a sustainable coexistence between all the ecosystems. This is why I've realized education is very, very important, and this is why having realized that I have the responsibility to a safer environment, but also I have the responsibility to control what has already been destroyed. So having realized that, and that is why I've become an advocate for environment after going to school and also trying to interconnect the environment and education. So climate change and education comes one at a go. The first thing I started in the settlement is to sensitize the community, because that is the part of education aspect of it. People are not aware that their action is actually leading into climate problems or environmental problems, or even their action can alter the situation. So the importance of education comes in a way where we need to not only educate so many young people to school, but also to try to bring an aspect of community sensitization on their responsibility towards climate actions, toward the safety of their environment. That consequently can bring a better rainfall pattern, soil productivity. So I've been trying to communicate this, that it is very important to take a vulnerable person like refugees to school, and that refugee can actually come back to give back to community like we are doing. My team are actually full of students from universities, and we started our organizations as students from universities, having realized that majority of our people coming from South Sudan to Uganda recently is because of displacement and because of climate change. So we want to know what we can do for people back home to South Sudan, so that they can do what they can do better in the camp, and also do it back in South Sudan when they go back home. This is the reason why I keep saying education is very important to people who are being displaced, and they should be educated formal school and also be sensitized on climate change.
Thank you very much, Sapira. Now the gentleman in the short sleeve shirt, and then actually, okay, to you, sir. Actually, no, he's on.
مساء الخير، أنا إيهاب زيدان، أنا صحفي في موقع درج. عايز أسأل سؤالين. السؤال الأولاني هو إيه منطقة الشرق الأوسط، الهجرة المناخية في منطقة الشرق الأوسط بتمثل كام في المية من الهجرة المناخية حوالين العالم؟ ده الجزء الأولاني. الجزء الثاني إيه الجهود اللي بتعملوها عشان تساعدوا المهاجرين المناخيين في منطقة الشرق الأوسط؟
So I'll take probably the last 2 questions. Sir? Yeah.
Okay. I will speak in French. Mon nom c'est Souley Garba, donc je suis un agent de care international travaillant au Niger en fait. Bon, moi j'ai pas une question, mais juste un commentaire comme ça, parce que bravo d'abord au petit Assad qui a réussi en tout cas à me faire larmoyer, et ça c'est depuis que j'ai perdu l'image, ça fait des années. Quand j'ai perdu, je n'ai plus larmoyer si ce n'est aujourd'hui quoi. Donc vraiment, bravo quoi. Maintenant autre chose, juste pour remercier un peu tous les organisateurs qui étaient derrière ça, pour avoir donc réussi à éliminer véritablement des victimes de ces changements climatiques qui sont là. C'est le premier panel auquel j'ai participé, où vraiment c'est une réalité quoi. C'est vraiment, je ne regrette pas je voulais rentrer à la maison mais je suis resté, mais je ne regrette pas d'être resté pour avoir, vraiment je suis impressionné par ces organisateurs qui ont réussi à les amener ici, et je pense que garder le cap, continuer à les faire. Je pense que c'est GNR et UNHCR, donc vous nous inspirez aussi, car certainement nous allons à la prochaine COP pouvoir le faire. Donc c'est très important. Maintenant, l'autre chose rapidement que je vais dire par rapport à Falmata, elle ne parle pas beaucoup, mais juste dehors, quand j'ai échangé avec elle, elle me dit que c'est la première fois, elle a même été à la capitale du Niger, Niamey, pour vendre ses produits à GR, les chercheurs l'ont mandaté, mais c'est la première fois qu'elle part à un endroit là où il y a autant de monde. Et j'imagine qu'une fois rentrée chez elle, comment elle va raconter. Certainement, elle va être l'ambassadrice de tous les autres. Et j'imagine l'espoir qu'elle va donner aux autres sœurs qui sont là-bas. Vraiment, garder les caps, c'est très bien d'avoir imaginé cette idée ingénieuse de les amener et véritablement d'écouter leurs problèmes. Donc, je pense qu'il mérite un applaudissement, en fait, toutes ces organisations. Merci.
On that note, what I will do is actually speak to the journalist after in terms of the Middle East question, because it's not the, yeah, we know about the Middle East. But I do want to pass it to Falmata just to respond in terms of like work with Mani in that regards, and then we'll probably pass to Emmy if that's okay. So basically the question to Falmata was like, I think is, what can we do once she goes back to Niger to make that difference? She's here, there's commitments. How do we help her operationalize that? With you as well, Mani. And then we'll move to Emmy.
Merci pour cette question. Merci de me donner l'occasion de parler. Et quand nous portons l'espoir, nous rentrons avec beaucoup d'espoir. Nous avons beaucoup pleuré et ma compatriote a beaucoup pleuré au nom de toutes ses sœurs du pays, au nom de toutes ses sœurs d'Afrique, au nom de toutes les victimes des crises et catastrophes. Donc nous rentrons au pays avec beaucoup d'espoir et que nos structures sont toujours à côté des communautés et nous continuons de les soutenir et nous demandons le soutien de la communauté internationale et de tout le monde pour continuer à soulager les souffrances de ces communautés.
To ande aru awo morade nderu suniya baria kasuwa aru morade ndewo ande aru bana dewro rayana bana sano ande suniya baria kasuwa aru fondena ro wolo no ya kwanga yana lenu manum kudunjai banna ngadro suniya baria aru shima kala chadande enkara.
Elle dit, ce qu'elle demande, c'est que leur communauté retrouve leur terre pour qu'elles puissent rentrer chez elles, vivre chez elles, cultiver leur terre et pâturer leur bétail. dans la sérénité. C'est ça elle demande.
Finished? Yeah. Okay, so now what? Sorry. Now we'll listen to Emmy now, who will deliver another wonderful poem. But before I forget, I just wanted to thank Tasha, who's really sort of put this together for like the last. But she's been doing it in terms of also working with our key partners, IOM, ICRC, IFRC, WFP, OHCHR, Save the Children, our friends who have organised it from Niger. Like, these things are not easy to do. And it's been really a collaborative team effort. And I think what we've been able to see today is that if we all work together, you can make a difference. You can get over the hurdles. You can get the people who have the solutions, or who can at least bring the issues to the fore. So sincere thanks to all our partners if I've missed anyone, I apologise. I probably have. But Emmy, over to you.
Thank you so much, Andrew, and thank you so much, everyone, for being here. In the spirit of honoring commitments, I would like to start by calling up Assad to come and say some of his final remarks as part of my final remarks, because I've committed to do that, and I think he's wonderful. Assad, don't worry, I ran it by him before. I'm not putting him on the spot, I promise. He was like, I wanted to stand. There we go. Let's clap for him.
أنا كان لسه ما كملت كلمتي عشان عيطت، فعشان كده حابة أقول لكم إنه أنا لو كنت في محلكم بعمل أي حاجة عشان أخلي الطفل يكون سليم ويكون بصحة جيدة، وأوفر له التعليم والصحة، ويكون في مسكن أمين. يعني أعمل أي شيء يخلي الطفل سعيد. فلازم أنتوا تعملوا زي ما أنا أعمل، أخلي الأطفال كلهم سعيدين، مش طفل واحد، جميع أطفال العالم يكونوا سعيدين ويكونوا فرحانين، وأوفر لهم المأوى والتعليم والأكل والشرب. وعندي سؤالين، عندي سؤال للمسؤولين: هل هناك إجراءات استعدادية لحماية الأطفال المعرضين لخطر التغير المناخي؟ عشان كده أنا بطالب بحقوق الأطفال. وشكرا.
Beautiful. Now, to solve climate change, we just have to do what Assad said. To me, it means a lot to be here. It's a huge honor to be here. And thank you again, Assad. I became a public speaker when I was 10, and I remember always thinking, what did the children do? And that's what Assad reminded me of today. He said, I want to know where they are. Are they living? Are they dead? Are they gone? What happened to them? And so having to grapple with that question, especially at this age, to me is hard to watch, because it feels like we're continuing to repeat the cycles of generations, cycles of structural violence and more. We heard from everyone today. We heard from Falmata, from Mani, from everyone. We heard that when we talk about loss, when we talk about representation, we're not just talking about loss of property. We're talking about loss of safety, loss of life, and loss of time. We're talking about how it is that our people and our generations and our safety and our peace of mind is taken from us for preventable things. To me, it was very emotional today and every time we talk about this topic and any topic concerning refugees, because as I was mentioning, it's really, really hard to be someone here to talk about these different things and to know that when you speak truth to power and between until the time that power truly acts, between when you speak truth to power and when power truly acts, there's a buffer zone where you lose people. My younger cousin Mohammed, very recently, who was only a few years older than Assad, we lost him in the floods. He drowned, and it never gets easier to talk about it. There is this feeling of guilt that you can't explain. There's this feeling of pain, and there's this feeling of survivor's guilt and stress and sorrow, and I hope that we can alleviate that with the work that we do. It is 2022, and we shouldn't be having to advocate to end preventable deaths. To me, that's something that is so painful to say. It isn't a question of whether this thing is important or if it's important to include us. It's a question of why haven't we solved this problem yet? Part of the reason could be because we don't fully see humanitarian problems as problems that have solutions. We see them as charity events, sometimes vanity projects, sometimes things that are a possibility or something you check off on a box. But to everyone here on this panel, this is a life or death question. And even when you get to my level or Andrew's level or any of these different spaces, and a lot of you know this sitting here in the audience, even then you still lose people, and it's very difficult to talk about that. I love what the sir in the front said, and all of you, of course, that this topic should be the inspiration for the next COP. Because for me, the conversation on human rights has and continues to be an incomplete picture. Whether it's climate change, whether it's safety or protection, it's an incomplete picture. And speaking as a woman from Darfur and Philly, I know what it means to be invisible. And I think that it's really hard to talk about these things and not bring to light the fact that we're subject to erasure in practice, on the ground, and again in dialogue, again in protocol, again in legislation. over 70% of refugees are from highly climate vulnerable locations. 9 in every 10 conflict displaced refugees in 2021 returned to highly climate vulnerable countries or situations, out of the frying pan into the fire. Story as old as time. Disaster-related displacement quadrupled since the 1970s. And in 2021, more than 60% of newly recorded internal displacements were caused by disasters. I think there are no more excuses and no more words left to say. I think that me, at 29 years old, having started speaking about this when I was 10, it fills me with joy to see Assad here alive and ready to speak, but it hurts so much to know that, sorry. To know that his generation is still doing this kind of work now. We need it to stop, and we need to make sure the next generation doesn't have to do this. This is a very personal thing for me, as you can see. When my family escaped from Sudan, we went to Yemen, where my sister was born. And earlier, thanks. Man, I worked so hard on my makeup, guys. When my family escaped from Sudan, we went to Yemen. That's part of our story. مصر إحنا أولاد النيل. You know, we're all one family. Assad, I don't even have to explain the conversations that I had on the ground, virtually. I remember Osman. He was in Bangladesh. He's a Rohingya. And sitting with Mani and Falmata earlier, I was talking about how her beauty marks remind me of my grandmother who's deceased. It isn't a question that we're all connected. We already know this. But the question is that enough? And when will our deaths mean enough for change to happen? There are a lot of barriers to entry, and there are a lot of barriers to excellence. Next year, I do expect to be in the negotiation rooms, and I expect all of us to get to have a voice there. I think we're ready, and I think we've been ready, and I think it's time for us to be included. I said earlier during one of my Arabic interviews, مسؤولية الشباب إن نرفع أصواتنا. مسؤولية المسؤولين كقادة العالم إن يسمعوا ومسؤوليتنا كالكل إنه نعمل الآن. To me, it's as simple as that. Our responsibility as the young people of the world is to speak up. The responsibility of the world leaders is to listen. And the responsibility of all of us together is to act. Acting together would be better than counteracting everything each other are doing. So, without boring you, no, I'm kidding. This means a lot to me, as you can see, and it hurts to have to keep advocating for the same thing over and over again. I pray for the day that my poetry is a relic of history, something that only talks about things that have passed and not things that are ongoing. This poem is called Di Baladna, which means this is our home, and I hope something comes out of it. Thank you. If you are reading this, I forgive you. You have grown far from the heart of me, my child, have lost the familiar love we held for one another in your first years of life. When you were young, you marveled at the plants and critters that ran across my bosom. You worshipped the water, ran up and down my rivers. You drank from my rain. You didn't hesitate to sink your fingers into the mud of me and tickle loose little droplets, pebbles, seedlings, and worms. How you built a refuge for every wayward wanderer, lining the kitchen shelves and jars of lightning bugs and butterflies. You drank the breeze from my trees, the honey, sap, gum with joy and ease. How you came to me, resting your head at my tender hearth, your weary body in my pockets. You loved me. You nurtured me before you knew what it was to nurture, tended me before you knew what it was to tend. Tiller, sower, farmer, green-thumbed little one, you knew me. Lately, you hurt me. You break and cut and tear into me, and I forgive you. For I am a part of you, like your brothers and sisters before you, so I forgive you. I forgive you again. For the reaping you do with no intention to sow, again, for the waste and greed and gluttony when you were young. You used to ask me why they do this. Once brothers and sisters, now staining the earth with the blood of your people, shaking apart the branches of your family tree, you losing hope and ground all in one fell swoop. You came to me, resting beneath the shade of date palms and magnolias, begged me to make sense of it all. All I could offer you then was a promise that wherever you would go, you would find me. But lately, there isn't much left for me to promise. They've dug pits into my sides, have stolen the rubies, gold, and diamonds Maya placed in my thighs. I do all I can to heal, but my weary body won't clear away the hurt so easily. I cough and spew and gush and bruise, and it will not heal. My waters rush but do not soothe. The air in my lungs suffocates the little ones when a child of mine dies by my hand. Here, in the long-forgotten valley of your youth, visitors come not of their own accord but by necessity.
Abdul Ghani and his Dihara sink their fingers into the mud of me, saplings cling, and I am whole again. Hatim builds monuments to my skies, captures the sun, channels the lightning, and I am whole again. Luca and Layatu surround their homes and trees, fruit born of me, the children eat and grow and are healthy, and I'm whole again. Usman protests, it isn't mine alone to mend, he says. I need you to build and build again, to make new, to bring forth life from a relentless earth, making an oasis of charred terrain, to build a refuge from only scar tissue and lightning strikes. Let me be more to you than just a final resting place. Let me do more for you than call you home, child of mine. If you are reading this, I need you, your mother. If this land could speak, would she thank us, praise us? Would she ridicule us or beg us? Would her voice be weary, gentle, disdainful? Would it shake with sorrow, with rage? I used to ask myself these things all of the time. At 11 years old, I watched my neighbor's house crumble before my eyes. The floodwaters came and washed away the earth and clay most people used to build their homes. To see her wade through her home like that, to watch her try and salvage all that she had left. Our country was already locked in turmoil. Now the earth began to purge us too. If you could stop the next tornado from leveling your home, the next hurricane from wiping out your city, the next drought from starving your people, or the next lightning strike from ending your life, wouldn't you? The locusts in the Horn of Africa, the ice in Chicago, the fires in California, Australia, the threat of rain that won't stop or rest that won't come. We are at the precipice of possible change, a turning point that can and will define us, fire or ice. How will the world end? I don't know. And I don't want to find out. Not in this generation, not in the next. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
I would also just like to not
Thanks,
only
everyone.
make sure that we give an applause to Emmy, she deserves it, but to all the panelists
Yes,
for
that's
coming
it.
here.
Thank you.
And to everyone who's helped make this happen, but also the interpreters, the translators, the technicians, everyone who's contributed to tonight. Shukran.
Wait, teach me how to do it. You know?
No, you just what?